The holy Baal Shem Tov was born in Okup, a little town in Ukraine, and his rabbinic life was mostly in Mezhebush, and there are so many incredible stories about him. And I had the incredible honor and privilege of being in Ukraine in 2011, making a film about the life and legacy of the Baal Shem Tov. And one of the two films that we made is actually we're doing a screening on Tuesday evening at the JCC with a panel discussion about the Jews in Ukraine then and now. But the Baal Shem Tov, one of my favorite stories about the Baal Shem Tov, as well as being this great mystical and mythical figure, he was also a shochet. He was the ritual slaughterer in the town of Mezhebush. And when he died, he trained someone else to be the shochet, training him in all of the deep kavanot, the deep intentions of how to perform the ritual, all of the halacha, how to sharpen the knife, where to hold it, how to make the cut. And in the next generation, when this person who had learned shechita, learned ritual slaughter from the Baal Shem Tov, was one day slaughtering some chickens, there was an old man who remembered the Baal Shem Tov, who was standing next to him, and every time he put the knife to the neck of one of the chickens, he would go and after a while the new shochet goes to the old man. He says, I don't understand, like, what am I doing wrong? I learned everything from my teacher, the Baal Shem Tov. I learned it all. I learned all of the halacha. I learned how to give the right kavanah, the right intention for this. I wet the knife. I take the knife. He said, yeah, it's true. You wet the knife with water. The Baal Shem Tov used to wet the knife with his tears. You wet the knife with water. The Baal Shem Tov used to wet the knife with his tears. Each time the Baal Shem Tov would be prepared to slaughter an animal, he would cry these tears of a broken heart of what he had to do to take the life of one of those animals. We just read the whole of chapter 11 of Vayikra, which is all about kashrut, about what it means to eat or not eat things that have lived, whether in the air, in the sea, on the land, creepy crawlies, mammals, fish, birds. And of course the Torah gives us permission to eat certain things that have been alive, but that story from the Baal Shem Tov, which just moved me so much, is just this idea of, like, what does it really mean when we eat in a holy way? Because the way that chapter of Torah ends, and the Parsha of Shmini ends, it says this it says, Zot Torata behema v'ha'of v'kol nefesh ha'chaya ha'romeset b'mayim u'lechol nefesh ha'shoretzet al ha'aretz. So this is the law of all of the things when we get to eating living things. And then it says, lahavdil, to make a distinction, ben ha-tamei uven ha-tahor uven ha-chaya v'ne'echelet uven ha-chaya asher lo te'achel. That we learn how to make distinctions between that which is tahor, that which is ritually fit, and that is which is tamei, that is which ritually unfit. These two categories, tahor and tamei, are so fascinating. And the Talmud spends so much time talking about what they are. And in some senses you could say, post-destruction of the temple, they don't exist as real categories, because we're not offering sacrifices in the same way. We're not offering those sacrifices where we have to think so carefully about, is this tahor or is this tamei? Is this ritually fit or is this ritually unfit? The other categories of kadosh and chol, holy, sanctified, or regular and secular. And then this whole idea of what is kasher and what is pasul, or what is kasher and what is lo kasher. And it's whatever our practice is, whatever we choose to eat or not eat, the Torah invites us to consider that anything that we take into our mouths has the capacity to be tahor and has the capacity to be kadosh. that we, through consciousness, and many of us have different rituals about how we are conscious about what we eat. Some of us, including me, choose to have plant-based diets and be vegan. Other people eat only meat that has been very well sourced, or whatever our practice is. Some of us have a strong practice of making a bracha, or having a high consciousness every time we eat something, about meditating on the food. Some of us only eat at certain times. I happen to be an intermittent faster, meaning I only eat, except on Shabbos and Yom Tov and other special, but I only eat basically from noon till 8 p.m. It's about all of these ways we eat. Many of us way too much, me, way too much. We eat a lot of foods. Eating is something that most of us do multiple times a day. And so the fact that the Torah has so much to say about what and how we eat when we eat, right? It's very, very, very powerful. The idea that we can have such ritual around, whether it's shechita, whether it's ritual sacrifice, whether it's a system of making brachot, of making blessings of our food, or whether it's eating at certain times, whether it's elevating our meal through having a Shabbat meal or a Yom Tov meal that's really not just about just a dinner party. It's actually about an elevation. The idea, the rabbis of the Talmud saw this idea that the Shabbat table is like the Mizbeach, like the altar in the temple, right? There's this powerful way in which food plays such an important role. Any of us who have dogs, and I was really noticing this as I was taking my dog for a walk this morning, notice that they're not so discerning about what they might put in their mouths. Right? When I take my dog across the street, when I take Baruch across the street to the JCC, there happen to be a lot of Canadian geese flying around, and he loves to eat goose poop, and he loves to eat horse poop, and he loves to eat any other animal's poop that he can. And I find it absolutely disgusting and gross, and I try to do everything to stop him. But it's like this, one of the things that separates us from animals is that we can have consciousness about what we put inside our mouths. He doesn't have, I don't know what goose poop tastes like, but he obviously thinks it tastes pretty good. But the fact that we can have that discipline, that consciousness, that awareness of choosing what we put in our mouths and having some kind of consciousness that we can elevate what it is, especially if we choose to eat animals. Yesterday I was just telling Karen this, yesterday I had lunch with two rabbinic colleagues who came in from Denver to meet me. We had lunch in Leaf, and when I got there, the chief of police, the city of Boulder's chief of police was there. Tara already knows this story. And she was getting ready to sit down with a local judge and with her chief of staff, and we were chatting a bit about various issues that have been coming up in the community. And I said, I love that you love the same restaurant that I do. She said, I love this place, and I'm a vegan. So I thought, that's cool, I'm a vegan too. And it's kind of probably not that many chief of police in the country who are vegans, but she is. Anyway, I'm not here to give that, so I've given that sermon too many times. I'm not here to say that everybody should be a vegan, although I firmly believe that we all should. But I'm here to just say that when the Torah is talking about kashrut, when the Torah is talking again and again and again about these different categories and about what to eat and when to eat, there is really this very profound invitation to see that our lips, our mouths have the capacity to bring holiness into the world, right? There is this very strong connection that some commentators bring to what we put in our mouth and what comes out of our mouths. If we don't have any sort of awareness or consciousness, if we just and believe me, I have times where I am eating in that very unconscious, unmindful way. If we're just grabbing something and putting it in our mouths and not thinking about what it is, not thinking about where it came from, not thinking about the farmer that grew it or the animal that gave its life for it, then according to many of our commentators, we are much more likely to have foul things coming out of our mouths, whether it's lashon hara, whether we're talking trash about other people, or whether we're just saying, unkind things, whatever it is. There's something about our mouth, which is a holy vessel. That's what the Torah is really telling us, the capacity to bring Kedusha into the world. And a lot of it is about mindfulness, I think, and awareness. Last Shabbat, when I was not here, I was leading a Jewish mindfulness retreat in the mountains for a group of people in their 20s. and it was a really wonderful experience. But what we did as part of our Shabbat eating practices, we did a lot of mindful eating meditations, like before we ate the challah on Friday night, or before we ate whatever we were going to be eating, just holding it up and just taking a moment to think, like, where did this come from? What had to go into the production of this particular food? You know, whether it's plant-based or not plant-based, like, what had to go into it? How many people were involved in bringing this food that's about to go into my mouth? How is it going to nourish me? How is it going to allow me to have the energy to do what I need to do in the world, right? I think we get so caught up in kashrut and Jewish dietary discipline as being something that doesn't have relevance or impact on our lives. Many people who care very deeply about Judaism think kashrut is antiquated. Kashrut's about, it was probably because it wasn't safe to eat that stuff back then. You know, it's all kind of, the rational mind kind of creates these stories about what the origins of kashrut might be. But if we really look deeply into the commentaries in the Talmud and the commentaries in some of the mystical literature, kashrut is an incredibly deep system. I mean, those of you who do choose to eat meat, the whole idea of what a cloven hoof represents, of what a ruminant stomach, what an animal that chews its cud represents in terms of a process that's able to internalize and able to digest in a certain way, so that we are digesting something that itself has a different capacity to digest its food. You know, there's this way in which the separation of milk and meat is about two incredibly powerful forces in the world, a force that is about life and giving life through milk, and a force that is about taking life through meat, and how those two things are sort of opposite energies, and how, like, keeping them separate is really important. There is so much wisdom in the Torah, and it's sad to me. I'm not here to, you know, give a fire and brimstone sermon that judges you and tells you all off for your own eating practices, but I'm here to ask you to consider that the Torah has incredible wisdom about food, and about the sources of our food, and about the discipline around our food, about how we eat, about what we eat, about when we eat. And it's you know, I don't often give sermons about kashrut. Yes, I admit I've given sermons about veganism before, but it's not about that. It's about the fact that those of us who eat multiple times a day, like me, although only, of course, through in the restricted hours, but no, those who eat multiple times a day, it's like if every time we ate, we had just the awareness. First of all, I know that if I did that all the time, I would eat way less than I currently do, because, you know, often when we're busy, when we're tired, when we're on the run, we're just grabbing something quickly, and we're not really thinking about how it's nourishing us or if it's the right thing for our bodies. You know, I wouldn't say that the Torah's in its laws of kashrut is sort of giving us a sort of healthy eating plan necessarily, but it is giving us a conscious eating plan. It's giving us a conscious eating plan. It's telling us that these categories of tahor and tameh, of things that are ritually appropriate and things that are ritually inappropriate, can exist in our world, because they're about having consciousness about what we put in our mouths, that having the capacity, and the Torah says in this parsha, you know, Tihiyu kadoshim ki kadosh ani, be holy because I am holy. And the fact that it's mentioned in this particular section of the Torah is implying that we, human beings, animals with the ability to discern, lahavdil, like it says in that passage there, the ability to discern and make conscious decisions about what we put in our mouth and how we put it in our mouth and when we put it in our mouth. That in itself is an act of holiness. That is a way to imitate, as it were, God. Kadoshim to you, be holy, because I am holy. I'm giving you this opportunity to, you know, like an animal that chews its cud, to have discernment and distinction and separation about the food that we put into our bodies. So, Karen has prepared us a beautiful little lunch today that those of us who are here and present, I'm so sorry for those of you on live stream who are not going to be able to enjoy this, but we're going to have a really lovely lunch, and I had all the ingredients and came in and made an eggless egg salad, which I invite you all to try. That's made out of tofu, and there's something so powerful about community, and it's something I know that many of us have missed so terribly much in these 2 hard years of not being able to eat together, and so many people just eating on our own or just in very small groups of people. And there's something very powerful, not just in Judaism, but in so many spiritual traditions, of the power of breaking bread together and eating together in community. In fact, there is this book, and I cannot remember the name of the author, but it was a book that my doctor showed me once, a book about longevity and about studies of the people who live longest in the world. And one of the most common factors about longevity is people who eat slow, long meals in community together. There's something about having not just food be something that we grab on the go, which many of us do, including me, too much of the time, but actually sitting consciously down with other people and eating in a slow and thoughtful and conscious way is, according to this book, and I will try and find the author and the name of the book, an incredible common factor in communities that live longer. So we're going to finish up our service, and then God willing, you'll all be able to stay, and we'll go outside and we'll make kiddush, and we'll enjoy some food together. And as we're tasting that food together, we can just think about the power of eating as a holy act. The power of eating as an act that prepares us to be Avdei Hashem. That's one of the sources that Nitivot Shalom brings. The power of eating as a practice that can help us be true servants of the people and true servants of God through having that kind of discipline about what we eat, when we eat, and how we eat. So, looking forward to breaking bread with you all, and with some of you online at another time. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.